Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Talking TEAM-CBT. Today, I was going to say we, but Daniel's not here with us today, sadly. I'm here with Cheryl Delaney, who's a passionate TEAM-CBT therapist specializing in perfectionism, among other things, in Atlanta, Georgia. Wants to talk about team to anyone who'll listen. So glad you're here with us today. Welcome, Cheryl.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is exciting.
Yeah. So the first question we always start off with is, what got you into team to begin with?
I was a new graduate, had gotten into therapy as a kind of later career move. I didn't study psychology in college, just kind of switched it up, and I got out of school, had no idea what I was doing. I stumbled across a blog post by Dr. Burns about the downward arrow, and it was sort of off to the races from there. Listened to the whole archive of the podcast. I had to mail in to get the
Right. Therapist to again.
and the ebook.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Back in
The
the
little snail
day.
mail forms.
Yes. I remember writing out my check and going through that and writing out my horrible 5 secrets responses to things in my practice, and just really working hard, struggling on my own to get better, and then eventually found my way to a bunch of great colleagues and to better training.
So you got out of grad school and weren't ready, which we hear commonly from people getting out of grad school. They're like, oh, yeah, I'm going to go to school. It's going to get me all ready to go. And then we get out, and not just in our field, but in lots of fields, but I think especially in psychology, because we're, really working with people at such a vulnerable state that we want to be more prepared. Now you mentioned seeing David's downward arrow. What was it about the downward arrow that was so intriguing that took you into this like rabbit hole?
Oh man. Well, the downward arrow got me to his website. And that's sort of an embarrassing story. I was collaborating with a colleague, and we were working on developing a workshop together, and she's like, oh yeah, and then we can do the downward arrow. And I was like, oh yeah, sure. And then as soon as she left that day, I was like frantically Googling. I don't know what you're talking about. I acted like I pretended I did. I put on a good front, but which I would not do now. But that got me there. And then I think honestly what really hooked me in was 10 he had a post about something like 10 errors that therapists make.
Yeah.
And I think it hit me right in the imposter syndrome and all of the things that, and honestly, like the things that I was doing badly, I could see, like, I'm sure there was some part of it that was my own insecurity, but it was well justified insecurity. I was doing this job that, as you're saying, is working with people in a really vulnerable state, and I didn't know how to do it well. And I was making all of these errors. So that really clicked for me, and it got me interested.
Okay, so we're back. We had to take a quick pause because my dog was barking, and we're two perfectionists here trying to do an interview. And in fact, this is our second go. And one of the things I wanted to bring up, because I kind of thought was interesting, is we talked about a little bit like how this affects you personally. And you were talking about some of your own hangups and things. So tell me, how has team affected you personally?
Oh, that's for some reason, and this is the second time that we're doing this, so just being totally upfront here. I don't think that question hit me that hard the first time, but I'm just thinking right now about all the different ways. Well, one really big example that's super meaningful to me is that my marriage is so much better than it was, and it was pretty great. Like, I felt pretty happy. It felt like a solid part of my life. There were other pieces, my career being one of them for a long time was unsatisfying. But the quality of our disagreements has changed so dramatically, and it's so much easier to feel connected, even and affectionate and warm, even when I'm angry.
Mm,
And sometimes it's kind of reluctant. It's a little bit of like, okay,
sure.
yes.
Eh, I gotta grudgingly do these 5 secrets. I know it's good for me and I'll feel better about it, but I don't want to.
Well, to admit, like, sometimes like it's much easier for me to just put a hand out. It's like I still feel warm towards you. I can't say the words yet.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That, I mean,
um,
stroking doesn't have to be verbal.
yeah, yes. Um, so yeah, that relationship and the I think the decrease in anxiety that I feel, got a hair on my face, um, throughout my life, because everywhere I go, I'm interacting with people, um, just people in the neighborhood, at the grocery store, my other family members, people in my life, that I don't have the same level of anxiety that I need to, just stuff down uncomfortable feelings or not acknowledge things. Um, and it just gives a level of comfort in moving through the world that I didn't
Mm.
have before.
I can so relate to that, and in a sense, the level of comfort with being okay with not being comfortable. Like I know that sounds like a bunch of crosstalk, and I encourage viewers, if you're on YouTube, look at Seeking Discomfort, because they've got a YouTube channel, and that's what it's dedicated to, is finding ways to be uncomfortable and finding out that it brought you even more joy in your life. And I think Team has done that for me as well, where I've pushed myself. I used to have emotophobia really badly, can't ever feel emotions. And just that worry about, oh, I'm going to get anxious and that kind of thing. And I think it's really beautiful how you're saying how it just impacted your marriage and things like that. And I know you've talked in some of your videos and things about procrastination and perfectionism. So tell me a little bit about that journey.
Um, I would say that one is ongoing. I think that's one that I'm probably gonna fall in and out of enlightenment about for maybe the rest of my life. We'll see. One of the interesting realizations that I had while I was writing about procrastination is that we are all always procrastinating,
Mm,
because you can never do all of the things that you can imagine yourself doing.
sure.
And so, it's really when we talk about procrastination, what we usually mean is there's something that's important to me that's causing me some kind of frustration, discomfort, self-criticism, because I'm not doing it. But there's also a big barrier to doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and um, I think for me, decreasing the self-criticism part of that puzzle, um, makes it easier for me to get back on track, even when I get off. That I know that there are good reasons to want to avoid things, that I don't want to respond to that email because it makes me anxious, and it's natural to avoid things that make us feel anxious, even though seeking discomfort would bring us more joy. There is
Yeah.
this real human, like, survival impulse to avoid things that are unpleasant. And so I can have compassion for myself and see the good things, the values in, my avoidance, and just be kind of gentle with it. And like, yeah, it makes sense that makes it easier to do the uncomfortable thing, because I'm
Yeah.
not also adding the suffering of beating myself up.
Yeah, that guilt. I know that whole, well, if I make myself miserable, then I'll do it kind of thing. It never works, yet we try it over and over. And yet this voice of compassion can often give us a little bit of the support we need to move forward. And like we're to for our viewers who might just be happening upon this and not know anything about team, some of the stuff we've been doing in today's episode is a little bit of self-disclosure, both Cheryl and myself, by, saying, well, this is our second time and the dog's barking, all those things. And self-disclosure is a big part of our recovery journey, but also for 5 secrets and different things. And you've disclosed some really personal things that it's still an ongoing journey for you. So I'm wondering, what would you say to someone is, oh, well, sounds like team isn't all it's cracked up to be if you're still on a journey?
Yeah, that's a valid response. And honestly, like, it might not be for you, if it is a really effort intensive model. It's demanding for therapists and clients. It takes a lot. It's not like, I don't think it's an easy peasy, like, check the box and you're done. At least the most rewarding parts of this work for me have involved a lot of effort on my part, both time and emotional energy, that can be draining and painful at times. And I don't think I ever want to get to the end. Like, I don't think I want to, like, what would we do if there weren't challenges? What would I do if I woke up tomorrow? I mean, maybe for a couple of days it'd be nice, like a week vacation from any challenges. But I think that human beings tend to thrive when we can see growth, when we can see, here's some kind of hurdle, I do X, Y, and when it's really, really tough, it's like, here's this hurdle and we have no idea what to do about it. That can be, that's a different story than, here's this hurdle and I'm doing these steps, these gradual things to work towards a new direction, a new, I guess, to continue the metaphor, way of leaping over it.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, let me cut you off.
No, go ahead.
I think that just really speaks to, we're human beings, and team doesn't turn you into non-human. And I think some people have this expectation of therapy in general, kind of fixing them as if they're already broken. And I think we get that from the media and all this, therapist to stuff in movies. And to be fair, there are some conditions where we do need some extra support, and maybe broken might be an appropriate term. And some people align with that word, and they're okay with it as well. But I think the majority of people, we're kind of going through these ebbs and flows in life, and we're noticing our flaws and then trying to meet challenges in our flawed state. And team really gives you those tools to keep pressing forward, especially with procrastination work or perfectionism. And then in case of anxiety, I know for me, there's many anxieties that have completely gone and that they have never come back. And then there's some that are attached to some self-defeating beliefs, like you say, that we want to hold on to. They have some benefit, like maybe we enjoy challenges. I'm not really one of those, so I can't really relate to that. I mean, I could just sit on the beach, play with my dog and my cat. But there's many people who do align with that, right? They're like, they'd just be bored. And the beauty of team is it just meets all of those personalities, like, such different personality people that I've met in this field. So anyways, I'm doing a lot more talking than normally when I'm interviewing, but I feel really comfortable with you. And it's been kind of a pleasure. Well, let me ask you if, I'm trying to think if we have time for one more sneaky question. Yeah, let's sneak in one more question. Is there any goals in particular that you thought were going to not be achievable, from your graduate studies and knowing what psychology, with a package of psychology? Are there any goals that you thought weren't possible that now that you have team, you're like, oh, these are actually achievable for my clients or for myself?
So many. And so many that I didn't even know. Let me get specific. I think I thought that sort of palliative, like, just kind of talk it out and feel a decrease in shame by sharing your struggles with another person, was basically the extent of help that therapy could provide. I couldn't even picture what it would be like to have a whole different frame of reference for myself and the world and the people around me, and this interconnection between, I'm kind of thinking back to, I was talking about the relationships and then procrastination, and in both of those pieces, punishment plays a really big role. When we're angry at somebody else, we're taught that the only way to express that is by punishing them. We have to make them suffer, get vengeance and retribution. And that in some cases, like it's warranted and might be the appropriate response. And I certainly feel the draw to it, but the punishment is the thing in the procrastination that was really the hang up for me, to this, like, I need to beat myself up and that'll get me to get to work and really perform. And I kind of lost the thread of the original question, but I think being able to see threads and make meaning out of the patterns of my experiences change my perspective on what it would mean, what it means to have flaws or be a failure. Those things, I in the paradigm of we just listen and someone feels less ashamed because they can share their kind of deepest, darkest secrets. I wouldn't have thought that this whole world of kind of possibility was in there.
It's so incredible, the shift, the mind shift that can happen, because people are like, oh, CBT, that's just where you like think good, just have good thoughts instead of bad ones, like that. I mean, people are kind of like the superficial notion of what CBT is. And to be fair, I went to a solution-focused therapist, and it did feel very much like that. It was like, oh, what's worked for you in the past? Okay, keep doing it. It's like, oh, well, that was really helpful. But there's something deeper and more meaningful about TEAM-CBT in the way David outlines it, in that there's this transformative experience that I think a lot of people are just really surprised about when they get into this. And I think it's why a lot of psychodynamic therapists really actually enjoy TEAM-CBT. And they're like, oh, I didn't think I'd like this, but it's like so interesting and so deep. Which is it's just a beautiful thing, which is why I'm doing these videos, because I get really excited about it.
Do you remember? Go ahead. Do you remember those posters from the 90s where there would be this image in they were called like magic eye posters or something like that? You go and you sort of like let your eyes relax and shift, and you sort of like see a new picture.
Yes.
It kind of feels like that like there's this way that you're used to seeing the world, and you just you can't see the thing behind until the steps. Yeah.
What a great analogy. If I can find the image, maybe I'll put it up on the screen. I hadn't thought about that in a long time. Well, we're out of time today. It's been a pleasure to interview you, Cheryl. Our last question we always ask is, if all of the therapists in the world were listening, if all the procrastinating therapists, if all the perfectionist therapists were listening in the world today, what's one thing about TEAM you'd like them to know?
My mind is going to the values and the advantages of the self-criticism, because that's one thing that all of those people have in common, the therapists and perfectionists. Well, not all therapists, but many are very self-critical, and it's a key part of perfectionism. And I think it's really tough to get to that compassionate, non-punishing place without first seeing all the good that it's trying to do, all the like solid places that it's coming from.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being here, Cheryl, and thank you to our viewers. And we'll see you again in a couple of weeks for another Talking TEAM-CBT.